For some reason, Chair, I'm having problems with my camera.
I can hear you fine.
But my camera isn't working. I don't know why. Did same thing to me earlier today, but it worked again. But I don't know. I'm having some technical problems here. It's local, but I'll try and fix it.
Okay, we can hear you fine. So worst case scenario, your camera doesn't work, but we can hear you. We can hear you pretty clear.
Thank you.
So Chair Smith, the meeting is now live.
Okay. Oops, sorry. All right. Welcome everybody for today's meeting, September 7th, Halifax Board of Police Commissioner meeting. As always, I'd like to acknowledge that Halifax Regional Municipality is located on Mi'kmaq and ancestral traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and the municipality acknowledges the peace principles freely signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all free people. We have most of our commissioners here today. We have regrets from Commissioner Thomas, and Commissioner Kent also may join us at some point, but is currently traveling for CAPG conference. So we on Police Commission business. So we definitely appreciate her taking the time to travel. Carol, where is she going again? Is Ottawa?
Saskatoon.
Saskatoon, right. Thank you very much. So she may join us at some point during the meeting, but we are assuming she's currently in the air heading to Saskatoon at the moment. So we'll see if she has an opportunity to join us. That's why we went virtually also to give her an opportunity to join, because I know she did want to participate in the meeting today. With that, we have community announcement. Any community announcements at all? Seeing none from members, I'll just mention that it is back to school. All of the students from elementary all the way to university are back in the swing of it. So I know that HRP does put out warnings for motorists to slow down and remember the laws around school buses and whatnot. But for everybody else, back to school, practice all the safety procedures for students and those around. And also, and don't know if this will be it or not, but this could potentially be Commissioner McDougall's last official board meeting with us. I sad to say, we'll do a formal presentation as we always do later on, but just want to recognize that this may be, depending on how things happen with appointment processes. So Carol, I'm putting you on notice that we will formally be thanking you for all the work you've done for not just our board, but boards across the country. So I'll give you a tier later on when we have a formal presentation. With that, approval of the minutes from July 6th, July 18th, and August 25th. A motion, please.
I move that we accept the minutes of July 6th, July 18th, and August 25th as presented.
Thank you. Seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Critchley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, we have the minutes. Approval of order of business, proof of additions and deletions. Clerk.
Yes, Chair Smith. So there are two additions for this afternoon's meeting. The first addition would be item 11.1, which is Commissioner Smith, board policy respecting extra duty employment. And item 11.2, which is from Commissioner McDougall, the Canadian Association of Police Governance third annual conference virtual registration. As well, I'd also like to note a deferral of item 8.3.1 of the presentation from Al Jones regarding the use of force and arrest policies in the context of executing warrants in African Nova Scotian communities. This item needs to be deferred to a future meeting as there is a scheduling conflict for the presenter.
Any other items from members?
Item 8.3.1 of the presentation from Al Jones regarding
I don't know.
force and arrest policies and
Oh.
contracts executing warrants.
Commissioner Akinduju? Commissioner, we have an echo from your.
Sorry, I'm just trying to reset my screen, but I think I have to leave it because it's not working for me.
Okay, that's fine. We could just hear Andrea's voice in the background. There was like a loop happening for some reason.
Yes, my apologies. The YouTube for the meeting, like the actual video, just popped open on my Chrome. So
Oh,
that was
okay.
playing in the background. My apologies.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Sorry for blaming you. Yeah. All right, moving on. So if no one has any other items they'd like to bring forward or remove, I ask for a mover and seconder for the agenda as presented. Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Chrisley, seconded by Commissioner Blackburn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Marty, did I do something wrong?
Just if I don't believe there was a notice of motion. I think you raised something in one of your emails that there wasn't a notice of motion with respect to these, and it may be that you want to just take a 2/3 vote to put them into place.
So so it's in when we go further down, it has to waive notice, but should we do that now while we do the?
I would waive it right now and put them
Okay.
on the agenda. Be simpler, I think.
All right,
So
so. Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry. Chair, we could waive it now, or we could just have 2/3 vote to approve the addition of the items and then have the waiver of the notice of motion when we pass each motion later in the meeting.
Okay,
It's up to you to decide how you wish to proceed.
if we waive now, then we don't have to do it later, right?
That is true.
Okay, so let's just get rid of that vote we just done. And can we waive notice for both of them at the same time? We're gonna do them separately.
Both.
Okay,
Yes, you can do both at the same time.
okay,
So it would be waiver of notice of motion for items 11.1 and 11.2.
okay. Thank you. If somebody wants to move that, that'd be great.
I'll move that.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner McDougal, seconded by Commissioner Blackburn. Waive notice of motion on 11.1 and 11.2, board policy respecting extrajudicial employment, and 11.2, Canadian Association of Police Governors 33rd Annual Conference Virtual Registration. If there's no further comments on
And
the
just,
waiver-
and then just, I don't think you took the vote on the order of business, and then you're all set.
Right. So take the vote on waiving and then order of business.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
the way to proceed.
All right. So all those in favor to waive notice?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. So that passes. So now approve the agenda as presented with the notices waived. Correct? Thumbs up? Okay, good. All those in favor of the agenda as presented or amended? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, now we have an agenda. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Any calls for declaration of conflict of interest?
Chair Smith,
Yep,
I will declare a conflict of interest for item, so I'm just gonna pull up the agenda. Item 10.3.1.
10.3.1. All right, thank you. Any others? All right, seeing none. Declaration of deferred business, we have none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Clerk. All right, I don't believe we have any correspondence. for this
Sorry,
meeting.
excuse me, Chair. I was just looking at something.
No
So
worries.
yes, I can confirm that the clerk's office did not receive correspondence for this meeting.
All right, thank you. Any petitions?
As well, the clerk's office did not receive any petitions for the meeting.
All right, and I didn't either. So moving on, we have deferred our presentation from Ms. Jones. We will hopefully have that at next meeting. And now we will go to, sorry, I'm looking at this, and should the presentation, okay.
So Chair Smith, on the agenda, it would be the chief's updates first, and then the
Yes.
presentation.
All right, sorry, it was in between the bottom of the page and I couldn't find it where it says staff. All right, cool. So we're going on to the chief's presentation, or chief updates, and starting with Chief Casella. Chief, are you there?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you, and through you to the Commission, good afternoon, everyone. The following are being provided as part of my update. I would like to start by acknowledging the tragedy that occurred in James Smith Cree Nation in Weldon, Saskatchewan on Sunday. Our deepest condolences go out to the community and everyone affected. On September 1st, Dr. Timothy Bryan's report, which recommends the Minister of Justice mandate the collection of race-based data by police, was released. Deputy Chief Don McLean, as you know, is the co-chair of the group leading this multi-stakeholder effort to bring further accountability and change to policing practices. HRP supported the process and approach to standardize the race-based collection model across the province, and we look forward to supporting the new framework. Recruitment and preparing for ongoing attrition and building capacity remain an area of significant focus here at Halifax Regional Police. We had a strong intake for our 2023 cadet class, despite a shorter time frame for the recruitment efforts compared to previous years. We are currently nearing the end of our selection process and right near the end and at the interview stage of the 12 stages that are involved. The class will begin this fall with the first day scheduled to be Monday, October 17th. On August 25th, members of Halifax Regional Police attended the Atlantic Police Academy and PEI for a presentation to the graduating class of the Academy. This was all in an effort to recruit additional police officers to come to the Halifax Regional Police. We also continue to hire through the Experienced Officer Program. This hiring stream is another important facet that is helping us recruit for ongoing attrition and succession planning. Halifax Regional Police continues to make every effort to further investigate and deal with gun violence in our city. We also closely track and monitor these statistics. This year, there have been 6 homicides related to firearms in our city, and we have laid charges in 2 of those cases. We've had 17 shooting incidents and 229 firearms seized year to date. In the month of August, HRP officers issued 636 summary offense tickets, including 137 for speeding, 111 for driving without insurance, and 83 for failing to display up-to-date motor vehicle plates. HRP also charged 28 drivers with impaired related offenses, and we issued 15 driving suspensions in the month of August. We also had 75 calls for service to report suspected impaired driving. And from those 75 calls, 48 investigations were launched. We certainly commend the public for continuing to report this criminal activity on our roads. September's road safety theme is back to school safety. As mentioned by the chair at the beginning, it is back to school. And as we welcome thousands of students for the start of school, we are reminding everyone through efforts like Operation Fallback to do our part to maintain quality of life in our neighborhoods. On August 23rd, I had the privilege of meeting with a 9-year-old boy, KB Bernstein, who received a letter of merit from the Halifax Regional Police for his efforts in assisting a citizen in critical need. He went above and beyond that day to lend a helping hand, and it was an honor to meet with him and his family and commend him for his excellent efforts and near life-saving feats. On August 27th, Halifax Regional Police representatives, including our Central CRO, Constable Martin Cromwell, and our Central Division Inspector, Jeff Clark, attended the 28th annual Mulgrave Park Day event. It was a wonderful opportunity to connect with the community and show our support. The event included a barbecue and games for both children and adults. Subject to any questions, that is my update.
Thank you, Chief. Any members with questions, clarification?
I have a question. It's just asking for a reminder for the fallen officer ceremony. Could you just tell us again when that will be held and where, and kind of give some background to that?
So it's the save the date has gone out. Hopefully you have that, Commissioner. If not, we'll make sure we get it to you. It's October 16th, and it will be held at Grand Parade, as in past years. And further information will be forthcoming if you don't already have. And we'll also provide another reminder at our next board meeting at the beginning of October.
Sorry, I was on mute, didn't realize. Anyone else with questions? Commissioner Critchley?
Thank you, Chair Smith. I have 3 questions. I have them written down too, so if it's easier, I can ask perhaps if Andrea could put them up on the screen, really at your preference. So the first question is, there was a shooting that occurred in Dartmouth on August 27th involving a civilian, and I was wondering whether the HRP has policies around dealing with barricaded persons, so persons barricaded in a residence. So that'd be my first question. And maybe I'll look to Chair Smith for some guidance here. I can ask all 3 questions or just one at a time, whatever's easier.
Ask all 3, and if the chief needs a reference, we can go back.
Okay. The second question, I wanted to ask about the arrest of the protesters at the Eisner Cove wetland on September 6th. And, obviously there was a very large number of officers involved in this operation. So I wondered if you could say whether there was an operational plan developed ahead of time for the implementation of that operation. And yeah, so that would be and then I may have a follow-up question about that if that's okay. So those would be the 2 questions I'm going to ask for now.
Okay. Chief?
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. Through you, Chair. Just for clarification, are you relating the homicide from the weekend to a barricaded gunman?
No, my apologies. There was a shooting on Carleton Street in Dartmouth. I believe there was an individual. I think the matter's been referred to CERT. I don't want to ask about any of the specifics, obviously the matter where it's been referred to CERT, but just asking about policies dealing with barricaded persons.
And through you, Chair, yes, we have policies related to that.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the second question.
And just so I'm clear again for context, the question was there an operational plan in place for the event yesterday?
Yeah, that's right.
So through you, Chair, we have been responding for some time to that area for several calls related to public safety. And we have been in the area over the past several days, over the past couple weeks, all in relation to public safety in that area. And we were there for this very same purpose yesterday with an operational plan and ensured that people were kept safe.
Anything further, Commissioner? Did you have one more question?
Chair Smith, why don't you go ahead and then
Okay.
I may ask some follow-up if that's all right.
Yep, sure.
I just don't want to monopolize the time, obviously.
Nope, that's fine. Anyone else before I ask a question? I don't see anyone in the chat or putting their hand up. Okay, great. Yemi, or Commissioner Akinduju, I can see you now, so great. So Chief, just two things. I wonder if you can talk about the HRP, maybe your involvement with the provincial standards for policing that I guess is coming in the fall. I know there was a news article where the Justice Minister referenced that will be ready in the fall. We as a commission and we as chair, I haven't had any knowledge of that process. So just wondering on your end of it, what you can share, I guess, publicly of what that review might involve itself. And just to follow up on Commissioner Critchley with the policy barricading person, I know you're going through the big policy refresh, which will be rolled out as time allows. Would that policy be part of the operational aspect of the policy updates, or would that be part of another aspect? I'm just curious where that policy would fall under the categories that you're updating.
So through you, Chair, just in regards to policing standards, you may know that there is a review going on by the Department of Justice in relation to policing standards in the province. We are part and participating in that review. There are two groups that are looking at this. There's a working group, and then there's a steering committee, working committee. We have participation in both, and we continue to work with the province and law enforcement partners across the province on that review. Just in regards to the barricaded person policy, I can't tell you off the top of my head where it sits in the review process, but I'm happy to find that out. You may know that we are doing the review. We continue to do that review. We'll be coming forward again to the board with further information on that. And all policies are subject to review unless they've already been done. And then we're working towards getting them all on a cycle, preferably 3 years, but it might be 5. We'll see how we establish that as we go forward. Obviously, we'll have some consultation with the board on that as well. So I don't know exactly where the barricaded person policy sits. I can also not tell you the last date that it was refreshed, but I can get you that information if that is the wish of the board.
Okay, no, that's fine. And I guess the last thing this is, I guess it's new for all of us, related to the Mass Casualty Commission. I understand that you presented to them, I think it was last week or the week before. Just, I don't know how many commissioners were able to watch or read what was presented from your end. So I don't know how much you can share or what you're willing to speak to. Just wondering if you can just, I guess, speak to that, not the experience, but speak to why, maybe why you were asked to participate, for just so folks know in the commission who might not be paying attention. I'm not sure how to really, because it's sensitive to the issue. So, but I think it's important that folks know that you did participate and you were there. So whatever you think is willing to be shared, and there might be some follow-up questions.
So through you, Chair, to the commission, again, you said it, the Mass Casualty Commission is ongoing, so I'll keep my comments kind of brief and high level. We have been participating with the Mass Casualty Commission for a number of months now, supplying hundreds and hundreds, I would say, of documents, policies, whatever it is that they required from us. We actually put a project team together, had several members involved. It was quite time consuming. And I can tell you that other priorities had to be moved down the list so we could get that work done. We also participated in the answering of questions from the commission and supplied all the answers to all the questions that were asked. And also, as you mentioned, I did provide testimony on the 25th. I believe that is on the website. Should anyone like to go and review that, I think it's there. It's for public consumption, and that is available. And our participation continues coming up with the ongoing roundtables around the Mass Casualty Commission's work.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I see Commissioner Akinduju, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Given the fact that I'm still very, very new on the board, I need some clarification and questions. So my question is directed, or clarification is directed to the Chief. My question here is, I've heard so many things about policy when it comes to operation. Is there a difference between operational standard procedure that supports policing operations or operational policy? Or are they the same thing? I just want a bit of clarification because we seem to be asking for policy for almost every police operation. Would there be a difference? I'm going to just repeating myself, between operational standard procedure or operational policy. Thank you.
Yes, and through you, Chair, to the Commission, there can be a difference. Many of our policies, and this is part of the work that we are doing with our review, is to standardize policy and then procedure and make sure that they're clearly delineated. In some of our policies now, they are included together in one document, which at some point in time might have been the best way to operate. We believe that it should be delineated out and separated. So policy is clearly understood. And then, basically that's the why. And then the procedure basically is the how. Where it gets a little delicate for us, and, I can tell you that I understand the board's desire to understand policies and, why people get arrested and all those kind of things. I totally understand it. But we do have to be cognizant of operational integrity and how we release that information and how we share it. Part of it comes down to protection of the public, protection of our officers, protection and integrity of investigations. So I think I've answered your question. I added a little bit extra, but we do have to be cognizant of how we share, what we share, ensuring that we protect our operational integrity. But I also understand the importance of the Commission wanting to know and quite frankly, needing to know on many levels how your police service is operating.
Sorry, Commissioner Akinduju, you're okay?
I think so. I'll keep listening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Question, clarification, follow up? From the Chief? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Chief. Now we'll go to the RCMP Chief's update.
Good afternoon, Chair, and through you to the board. Just for the record, my name is Jeremy Landry. I'm the acting Halifax District Commander, and it has been a pleasure serving the residents of the HRM in this capacity. I'd also like to offer my condolences to the James Smith Cree Nation, the victims' families, friends, the community, and the residents of Saskatchewan. My thoughts are with the investigators as they perform very important work in the days to come, weeks to come, and likely months to come. Chief Superintendent Jeff Christie has been selected as the permanent Halifax District Commander, who should be assuming his new role towards the end of this year. Chief Superintendent Christie is incoming from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, where he has served as the Criminal Operations Officer and most currently as the Acting Commanding Officer of the RCMP in the Northwest Territories. Chief Superintendent Christie is excited for his new role, and he's committed to working alongside our policing partners. We are fortunate to have Jeff's leadership join us here in Nova Scotia. I'd like to acknowledge that Inspector Matthew Turner has moved from his previous position as the East Inspector over to the Criminal Investigation Division. It's important to know that Inspector Turner has worked approximately 18 years in the RCMP, has had the opportunity to work throughout Canada and internationally. He worked in Ukraine for a period of time and many years in British Columbia. Inspector Turner's background includes significant leadership experience within the largest and most heavily integrated units that policing has in Canada, specifically the Integrated Homicide Team in BC and the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit in BC. We are fortunate to have his leadership over in CID along with our partners in the HRP. I'd also like to acknowledge that Dana Colley-Provo has assumed the Preston Community Liaison position. Dana was born and raised in the community of East Preston and has worked for the RCMP for over 19 years in various units, most recently as the Administrative Assistant to the Support Services Officer. Dana is one of 5 developers and a facilitator on the 5-day African Canadian Experience course. This workshop has been very well received throughout the province and in fact, across the country. You'll remember that we recently delivered training in this regard in Ontario back in June. Dana has worked in the private sector, in the financial industry, and nonprofit sector. She's a volunteer with the RCMP Victim Services Unit and the Nova Scotia Public Safety Community Mobilization Team for the Preston Township. Dana prides herself in helping the community and strives to make it a better place for all to live. We are fortunate to have Dana in this position. I'd also like to acknowledge some incoming recruits that have just started in Halifax District. We have Constable Ryan Ingalls, who graduated in July of this year, originally from Surrey, BC, has been posted to Tantallon, and prior was a foreman for a construction company in the Lower Mainland, as well as studied criminology and political science in university. We also have Constable William Devine, graduated Depot in August of this year from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, lived in Halifax for 5 years prior to joining the RCMP and worked as a software engineer for Pratt & Whitney. Constable Devine completed a bachelor's degree in computer science from Dalhousie University. Finally, we have Constable Patrick Crooks, who is an experienced First Nations police officer with over 15 years experience. Patrick has worked in detachments across Alberta, Nunavut, and here in Nova Scotia. He recently arrived from Millbrook Detachment. A few operational matters. On August the 21st, the Clam Harbour Sandcastle competition took place. Musquodoboit Harbour members supported this event through increased presence and proactive patrols. Competition attracted thousands of spectators to the area and was an overall success. On August 25th, the Lower Sackville RCMP responded to a commercial intrusion alarm at a hardware store in Lower Sackville. RCMP arrived quickly, observed the suspect in the compound, hopped over the fence, and safely arrested the suspect before he was able to flee the area. Between August 31st and September the 5th, we had the World Sailing Championships that hosted over 200 athletes and crew from over 15 countries. We had over 20 RCMP officers that were involved in this event. through conducting boat patrols, assisting with traffic enforcement, congestion, and simply officer presence. Our presence at this event was very well received, and it concluded without any significant incidents to report. On August the 27th, Corporal Warrington, our Police Dog Services Corporal McLeod, and his police dog Nixon, as well as Constable Uloth, attended the back to school barbecue at Graham Creighton Junior High, hosted the Preston Area Housing and Community Mobilization Team. Free backpacks were given out to the kids, as well as a police dog, and their handler demonstration was put on for the children. On September the 1st, 2022, we received a report of a vehicle all over the road going from Sackville Drive to Cobbicwood Road. Members responded and went to the residence of the registered owner and observed him pulling into his driveway. The driver in this case blew over 3 times the legal limit and was arrested and charged for impaired operation of a motor vehicle. On September the 3rd, we had one of our traffic members on Highway 101 that intercepted a Hyundai going 162 kilometers per hour. Traffic stop was initiated, stunting ticket was issued, and the vehicle was seized along with a 7-day license suspension issued. Lastly, under the traffic category, on September the 4th at Old Sackville Road, Beaverbank Connector, RCMP was on patrol and located a broken down vehicle on the other side of the road. The driver was out of the vehicle and it began to roll backwards. The RCMP member pulled up behind the vehicle that was being pushed up a small incline by passengers in the vehicle. The driver in this case actually was determined to be impaired as well as prohibited from driving and had an unendorsed warrant for his arrest. The driver blew over the legal limit and was taken into custody and charged. A few notable events for the board. On August the 23rd, I had the pleasure of representing the RCMP at the 65th Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference that was held here in in Halifax. On August the 24th, we also had 2 female members from Halifax District RCMP that attended this conference to meet, greet, and mingle with guests, representing Canada's National Police Service. On September the 12th, we have the pleasure of hosting Commissioner Kent at RCMP Depot Division, where she will get to see a tour of Depot, the different units, and what goes on at our training facility. And lastly, between October 2nd and 4th, I will be attending the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Conference that is being held in Ottawa. Unless there's any questions, Chair, that's all from Halifax RCMP. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector. Any Commissioner Blackburn?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for that update, Inspector. I just a quick question about the staffing issues. So when your replacement or when the replacement for this position is in place, will you go back to being the inspector for the greater Sackville area? Because we sure don't want to lose you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. Yes, upon Chief Superintendent Christie's arrival, I will assume my substantive position in Lower Sackville, looking after West operations.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and thank you for stepping in during this this time. It's I know it's been difficult to juggle all the balls.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Anybody else? Seeing none. Inspector, my question is the same that I had for Chief Kinsella, just related to the provincial policing services review. Just wondering on your end, your involvement or other members' involvement in that review as well.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Yes, the RCMP is involved in the discussions surrounding the provincial policing standards in the same capacity as was explained by Chief Kinsella. We're cooperating fully with this process and contributing in any way that we can. And we look forward to continuing to work with our partners in policing in the province of Nova Scotia Department of Justice as these standards move forward this fall.
You might not have an answer to this, and I could have asked Chief Kinsella as well. Do you have an idea of what is being focused when we say policing standards? Like, what is because again, I haven't had any involvement with it, so I'm just not exactly sure when they say policing standards what they're focusing on. Because I know it has a little bit related to the Mass Casualty Commission and all the reviews, but just from your end, your understanding of what the review might entail.
Thank you, Chair, for that question. My understanding, similar to how Chief Kinsella explained at the MCC, was that policing standards would be developed for the province of Nova Scotia, and that police agencies would be required to meet those standards. As to what was implemented for that agency to meet those standards, my understanding is it would be left up to those individual agencies, but the minimum standards would be met, and then police agencies based on those minimum standards would be required to either adjust policies or practices to ensure that those minimum standards have been met.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Commissioner Critchie.
Thank you. And I guess like Chair Smith, I don't know very much about the standard process. It was sort of news to me that this was going on. So I have two questions. So the first is, to the best of your knowledge, do you know what standards, because there are, the standards are there's on different thematic areas. Do you know what standards are being either newly developed or redeveloped? So that'd be question one. And then question two would be, I believe Chief Kinsella mentioned that there's sort of two groups. There's a steering group and a working group. And I was, to the best of your knowledge, do you know who was on those groups?
Thank you, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the Commissioner. To answer your first question, my understanding is that all of the policing standards are being revamped and being assessed at least and looked at for any further recommendations on behalf of the province through input from all the police agencies in Nova Scotia. With regards to your second question, I'm not exactly sure which individuals sit on those different committees and working groups, but my understanding is there is a broad representation from police agencies in Nova Scotia, including the RCMP.
Thank you.
Commissioner Akintutu.
Sorry, my question is going back to Chief Dan. Is that okay?
Yeah, just one sec. Does anybody have any questions for Inspector Landry before we go back? I don't see anyone. So yeah, Commissioner, all yours.
Thank you very much. And sorry, Chief. First of all, let me thank you so much for the ride along, and I would like to share one of my experiences during this ride along, and that is driving this question. One of my experiences during the ride along was that we responded to an incident so promptly, and that required the assistance of an ambulance. And I can tell you the officer almost, he did not take that step, had to want to put the patient in his car and ride him to the hospital because the ambulance did not come in time. Maybe this is also driven by the so many movies that I watch, or probably the most recent event that happened in Halifax. My question, therefore, is, do we have a medical call within the Halifax police that would ride along, because I have noticed that the police arrive in time, but because of inadequacies of ambulances, they do not arrive in time. And we have lost 1 or 2 people because of the delay. Given some of the things that I've read and some of the movies that I've watched, police call would have a very strong medical call that rides along with them in such events. And they take care of this quickly before we have the medical call or the ambulance or city ambulance coming in. So my question is, do we have anything like that, or do we have a plan to avoid future losses of people going forward? Thank you.
So through you, Chair, to the Commission, I'm happy that you enjoyed the ride along, and you're always welcome to come back and ride again, as is any member of the board. Just need to connect with me, and we can arrange for that. There are occasions where responding officers, first responders, have to make decisions based on the scenario that they're faced with, the totality of the situation, risk assessment at the time. And we have had incidents where officers have made a decision to transport to the hospital. I can't speak exactly to the response time in your particular instance or in general of EHS, but I know that they do respond and are there. However, there are occasions where officers may have to do that. And we have done it quite successfully. It isn't generally their first choice. They would prefer if EHS can get there, but we also understand that, sometimes there are circumstances where one of our primary responses is to protect life. And we leave that very serious decision up to our responding officers to decide if it's better for them to transport the individual and or wait for EHS, depending on the circumstances.
So my question again is 100%, the police will be there at good time. They can take such responsibility, but is it possible, or do we, number one, have any call? Because I know the RCMP does have a medical call, but do we have any medical call that can assist in such events, given the response time of EHS at this time? Do we have the capabilities, or are we planning to acquire that kind of capabilities within the police call?
To partner with EHS or to have our own medical response within HRP?
To develop, could be civilian driven, but develop that competence within the HRP, yes, please.
Well, we currently don't have civilian first medical responders within HRP. We do have basic first aid training and sometimes advanced for all of our officers. So they have some ability in that area when they respond to make assessments. If you're suggesting that it would be something that would be useful, we can certainly have a look. I don't know off the top of my head whether there are civilian first aid responders embedded within police services. We do have the fire department that does assist with emergency medical calls. And as I mentioned, all of our officers are currently first aid trained for when they respond. And if there's something I'm missing, Commissioner, please I'm just trying to understand exactly what you're looking for.
No, you haven't missed anything. What I'm hearing is we do not have it. And I think RCMP does have that, because when we visited their facility, we saw some medical call. I think it's something that is necessary going forward within the police call themselves to ride along on essential calls, and it will prevent, it will help to keep life in some incidents if we can have first aid from the right set of people within the police call that could ride and proceed with calls as they are called.
Well, I'll connect with the acting chief superintendent and get some details on their program.
Commissioner, good. Take that as a yes. Really quickly, Chief, while we got you, and I forgot to ask a question here. So there was a story in CBC. What was the date? August 25th, that noted that for your participation for the Mass Casualty Commission, that you had to be subpoenaed. So I'm just wondering if you have any comment for us on why that had to occur for participate in interviewing.
Well, I think I'll just go back to, the overall response. I may not have fully answered this last time. I think there was a question around, why would they call, and then I'll address the process for how they bring people before the commission. So, it makes perfect sense, I think, under the circumstances that we would be involved and would be participating. The perpetrator came, fairly close to our area. We were providing assistance throughout the night to the RCMP, and that's well detailed in my testimony. So we did look after that. So it makes sense that they would, want to have an opportunity to ask further questions around that assistance that was provided and any other response that may have been contemplated. And, as far as the process for getting witnesses before the commission, I think there's a number of processes that the Mass Casualty Commission employs. And, the necessity for them to do that probably is best sought from them to get some understanding of why they felt that need.
Okay, so what you're saying is if the commission wanted to get a clear understanding of why they felt a subpoena was needed to get your participation, reach out to them and get that from them.
Well, they can, Chair, through you to the commission, they control the process of how they compel witnesses. I think, I don't know this. I don't think I was the only one that was subpoenaed. I believe that is a process that they use to bring people before the commission. That is, like I say, for the exact reasoning of their process, probably best from them. I can tell you that we participated, as I already mentioned, with the documents, the answering of questions, and we would have done that. So, the details I think are best sought from the commission.
Okay, thank you, Chief. If there's follow-up questions, we'll make sure we get those to you after reaching out to the commission. And I'll just mention to commissioners too that we as the board were hoping to I shouldn't say hoping. We were hoping to get. I'll say hoping because we did speak about it. We're hoping to get some information from the Mass Casualty Commission in terms of being engaged as the board for the biggest police force within HR within Nova Scotia, and that didn't happen. So again, not sure the process of why that didn't happen, but I know that there was some effort to be part of that. So I'll do some more background work and get back to the commission on those items. All right, so anyone else have any further questions, comments before we move on to our next item? All right, so moving on. All right, to 10.2.1 overview of police transformation study. So we have some folks here who are going to provide us with a presentation. I am not going to explain or try to steal any of the thunder from our guests. So I'll let them do all the explaining and presenting on this item. I'll just say, with the work that's being done on the transformation study happening so quickly, we thought it was important to give an update to the commission as this work is moving forward. So that's why we're here. And I'll pass the floor to whoever is up first to help bring this item forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Bill Moore here.
Hello, Mr. Moore.
Hello, sir. Hello to you and to the commission. I have been brought on, as I believe the board is well aware, Regional Council moved a motion to explore the policing transformation study. And as a result of that, PricewaterhouseCoopers was awarded the contract to do the background work. And when they were brought on in early May, I was appointed by Mr. Dubé as the project manager. So that's my role. I'm the link between HRM and PwC at this point and overseeing the project. And with that, the meat and potatoes of the project, I'm going to turn it over to the PwC staff that have been doing the heavy lifting over the next little while. And once they're completed, we'll all be available for any questions. Okay. So I'll allow Tara maybe to begin, and then she can do the introduction with Josh.
Sorry, I did the standard thing of speaking whilst on mute. But thank you, Bill, and thank you, Commission, for having us here today. We're very pleased to give a bit of an update here. I'm going to pass it straight over to Josh, who's going to take you through where we are on the project, and if you have any questions, we'll take them collaboratively. My colleague Bronwyn Burke will join as well as a panelist if need be. But Josh, over to you. You're on a double mute as well, Josh, I think. Same as myself.
Perfect. Hopefully that is fixed now. Thank you. Yeah, pleased to be here this morning. Very grateful for the opportunity to present on this project. It had started in the spring, and we're a good portion of the way through. So I think the timing is good to provide you with an update on where we are today. And we've been very lucky to work with Bill and team, including a few of the folks from the Public Safety Office in HRM along the way. So thank you very much for their support. And I'm glad to have Bill here with us today as well. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. Before I get too far into the updates of where we are and the work that's been completed to date and that is coming up, I just want to spend a moment here level setting on what this study is intended to do and the scope and the objectives of the work that we're completing. So we've been contracted, as Bill said, by HRM to conduct a study on the dual policing model that exists in the regional municipality. And we know that's a unique model. It's not totally unique in Canada, but it is quite uncommon. And there are definitely some unique nuances within Halifax region that need to be considered. Additionally, we know Halifax itself is a dynamic municipality in Canada in terms of population growth and demographics, and even the geography and the coverage of the land itself is unique. And so we're considering those elements as a part of the work that we're doing in both assessing the current model of policing and in developing future recommendations. At the same time, this is going on globally and within Canada. A number of municipalities and jurisdictions, provinces, are looking at their own policing models. So this is a time where, as I know this group is well aware, there are bigger, broader questions being asked of the role of police and how things, policing services are delivered or should be delivered in light of changing citizen demands, in light of significant events, and a number of other factors. So again, we're considering those, and this study is being conducted in the context of those other elements. The purpose of this study is to develop recommendations for a future policing model that will improve the quality and the effectiveness of police services and the standards and the way in which those services are delivered within the municipality. The other intended outcome is to more effectively integrate policing services within the broader community safety and well-being ecosystem. So we understand that police are just one part of that ecosystem of community safety, and there are a number of other programs and services in place that should be considered, and how they interact with the policing model as a part of the work that we're doing. So that was just a quick overview of the intended outcomes of this study. We'll be providing a number of deliverables to HRM for consideration, including an analysis of the current model of policing, the total costs of policing under that current model, a recommendation for a future model of policing, and the total costs of that future model, and a roadmap to transform the current model into that recommended future model. I'll pause there briefly if there are any questions, and if not, we can move ahead to the next slide.
Any questions, commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Critchley.
Chair Smith, I would just before I ask the question, I wonder, you want to leave questions to the end or sort of as to go? What would you prefer?
Josh, what would you prefer?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. I'm happy to take questions throughout if you please. If it suits the commission, I'm happy to answer questions at the end, whichever would be more preferable for yourselves.
Let's go through it, I guess, just in case the questions get answered while you're going through, and then if there's still questions, we'll take them at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we know that HRM has been going down a journey of kind of looking at pretty significant elements of public safety within the region. And there's been quite a significant amount of work and research and stakeholder engagement completed as a part of those previous studies and as part of ongoing initiatives, including the public safety strategy renewal. And we are taking those previous reports and that previous effort as inputs for consideration into the work that we are doing. We don't want that input that has been provided to past projects and past studies and to this commission or the municipality to be unheard in our work. And so we're considering where and how it makes sense to incorporate those different inputs in the work that we are doing. We're working closely as we can be with the public safety strategy renewal team to make sure that we are at least pointed in the same direction and aligned where it makes sense with that ongoing work as well, so that the end result of our recommendations are supportive and complementary to that public safety strategy. And I would be remiss without mentioning that we are obviously following along with the Mass Casualty Commission in those proceedings and are in contact and discussion with the HRM team regularly on the potential impact of that and information as it comes to light through that process. So that's a bit of some of the inputs. We've also conducted pretty extensive stakeholder engagement as part of our work and some research into global practices that are applicable and relevant for HRM. And I'll get into that in a little bit further here, but I just wanted to highlight, we know that this is not the first step on this journey. This is another step along the way, and we're trying to build on what's been done before. Next slide, please. So our approach is aligned with key deliverables, and so I'll run through those briefly and provide an update on the status of these. So there are 5 phases, although that is a bit misleading in terms of how the delivery of this project is going. The first 2 phases were conducted in parallel. The first being envisioning a future model. This is where we were able to engage with stakeholders from across the municipality to define a future vision and values and core guiding principles to guide and consider as a part of our development of a recommended future model. At the same time, we conducted an analysis of the current state, including the current costs of policing. I should note that we're very grateful to Chief Kinsella and his team and members of the RCMP who provided a significant amount of data and information and time in assisting us with this. And we have provided copies of those two major deliverables from the first two phases to HRM for consideration, and are working to finalize those currently. We are shifting at this point in time into designing that recommended future model of policing. And so this is really taking those inputs from stakeholders in the first envisioning phase and what that research into best practices and priorities for public safety in HRM, and some of those other inputs that I mentioned previously, and developing a recommended future model that is tailored to HRM. The operating environment within HRM, as you know, is unique, and a cookie cutter model that works in Saskatoon or Winnipeg or any other municipality may have elements or pieces that make sense, but we're considering the model as a whole and how it fits within that broader ecosystem of community safety that exists in HRM. At the same time, we are developing a transformation roadmap. So as we develop and finalize those recommendations, we'll be documenting key milestones and activities that are required to establish the elements of those recommendations to stand up that future model, and an evaluation framework that can be used to measure if the transformation itself is successful and if the intended outcomes of that recommended future model of policing are being met in the long term. So how do you know that the future policing model is delivering what it was intended to deliver in terms of tangible public safety outcomes for people in HRM? That concludes kind of the update. Those last three major deliverables in terms of the recommended future model, the transformation roadmap, and the evaluation framework are in development currently. They'll be provided to HRM later this fall, and I believe that presentation to council is scheduled on these reports for November. Are there any questions at this time? That's kind of it for an update. I'm happy to answer questions, or Bill, if you have anything to add, happy to hear your additional comments.
No, the only thing, we tentatively, we don't have it on the agenda as yet, but in conversations with the CAO's office, we're looking to have the report in our hands in HRM near the beginning of, end of September, early October, and looking at November council date to have it brought back to council.
Thank you. All right, so yes, that's nothing from further from you folks. Thanks again for the presentation. I know there's some questions in hand from commissioners. So I will start with Commissioner Critchley, then Commissioner McDougall.
Thanks so much, Chair Smith. I was wondering at the outset of the presentation, I'm just trying to pull it up again now. There was some language about the quality and effectiveness of policing service. Yeah, improve the quality and effectiveness of policing services standards in delivery. And I wondered if you could explain what you meant by quality and effectiveness and how that was assessed.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. That language is pulled directly from the contracting document, the RFP that was put out. We did establish, as a part of the current state report, an evaluation framework to measure those things and how we will compare the current model to the future model. Obviously, effectiveness in policing can mean a number of different things, and there are some of those elements which you can measure to some extent today, which you cannot measure in a model that isn't in place. An example of that would be response time. So we are not going to look at that, although we should be in a position to comment on if there is improvements in that area that are or could be expected, but we won't be able to provide detailed analysis for things like that. But we did provide a framework for how we will measure those elements outlined in that initial slide there. Does that answer your question?
I understand that the language maybe came from the HRM, but I'm just sort of wondering what the markers of effectiveness are. And I see that the framework, I see point 2 about the integration piece, but my question is just related to sort of what are the markers of effectiveness, either that can be measured or that are more speculative, as you're suggesting here with response time, that are kind of driving this project.
Sure, I will. I see Tara has her hand raised, so I think she wants to chime in here. I will defer to her for the moment and add to her comments.
Actually, Josh, and thank you, Commissioner Critchley, for the comment and the question as well. I'm happy to, Bill, I'm happy to share some of the evaluation frameworks as well, like further on, especially, it is included within the methodology. And then we can take it offline if there's any specific queries that you have about the criteria, but it's fairly significant. So and it is included in all the deliverables, so we can expand upon it in follow-up documentation if that would be suitable, Chair Smith, and to the rest of the Commission as well.
Would you be interested in that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. And I mean, the reason I ask is that, effectiveness together with adequacy is language that's used in the Police Act, right? It's the Minister as General Supervisory Authority of Policing in the province, and that's framed with respect to adequacy and effectiveness. And as a board, right, the board is also concerned with the adequacy and effectiveness of the police service, right, that we provide governance of on behalf of council, right? So, that's sort of where the question derives from. Is effectiveness is a central concern of the board. It's one of our statutory duties, right, to think about effectiveness. So that's why I'm asking.
So yeah, if that's information that can be further provided, that'd be great. And you can just send it to me, and I'll circulate it to the Commission. Carol or Commissioner McDougall.
Thank you. Thanks for this presentation. It's really interesting to see where your consultations have taken you. And I just have 2 questions. You answered one of them already. I had 3 originally. One was about the timeline for completion, but one of the other ones is about aligning with the policing standards that are going to be coming out through the Department of Justice, and how, I guess, amenable are you to putting a pause on whatever you're investigating, or do you anticipate that you will have to just look differently once those policing standards come out? That's my first question. And I was very curious to know, you talked about extensive stakeholder consultations, and I know there was an opportunity to join 2 meetings. Unfortunately, one of them held during one of our board meetings, which was sort of a difficult time for commissioners, given that our role is governance, and it's really significant in terms of whatever report you're going to submit to council. So I would leave those 2 questions, one about aligning with policing standards and will that halt your report, and the other about just an example of the extensive stakeholder consultations.
Certainly, thank you for the question, Commissioner. I should mention that we are working with a number of stakeholders across Nova Scotia in an advisory committee capacity, including a representative from the Department of Justice. And so we are in regular contact, monthly meetings with that advisory committee committee on things like those policing standards, and we have had follow-up and other discussions, particularly with the Department of Justice on those elements, to make sure that we're considering them where appropriate. And there is a plan to continue those discussions as needed moving forward as we develop recommendations and are able to, as you rightly kind of identified there, align ourselves where needed and don't go beyond kind of our mandate, but to make sure that we're in lockstep with what those that work is being done. So I hope that answers your first question there. Happy to elaborate on that a little farther if required. In terms of the stakeholder engagement, yes, we did have a few meetings which the commission was invited to attend. We covered over 7 days what we called envisioning sessions with a number of stakeholders, and those stakeholders, I believe, covered off around 20 different groups within HRM, including the council, including the Office of the CAO. I'm just pulling up the list here, so bear with me. Representatives from Dalhousie Legal Aid, Healthy Minds Cooperative, a number of different social and healthcare providers and other relevant community groups. And we worked closely with Bill and team to identify which of those stakeholders made sense to include. We also asked for written submissions from a number of stakeholders, of which we received some, and conducted engagement with HRP and the RCMP separately, and their union representatives in terms of the National Police Federation and the HRPA. So I hope that answers some of your questions. I can provide more detail if required on that and the outcomes of that engagement if you need. Happy to do so at your discretion.
Thank you. And I just have a follow-up. You said you meet monthly. I'm wondering if you wouldn't consider a governance representative within that group, given that that's the role of this commission. And there may be some learnings for us and for you by having that input, and suggest you might consider that.
Yes, that is a great suggestion. We're very fortunate to have Chairperson Smith sit on that advisory committee monthly to provide some of that lens to us. So yes, we do have that presence on a monthly meeting and are happy to provide support to Chairperson Smith in providing updates to this commission if needed.
Sorry, that was a gap in my knowledge. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
And I'll just jump in real quick. So with the way that the work advanced, and because sitting on that, very fortunately to be part of that, I felt that we were at a point where the commission should kind of be brought into where it is now. So that's kind of, because I was there, I really felt that, okay, this is a point where the commission should get an update, because a lot of work has happened, and it makes sense, and they were more than happy to present that, and that's why we're here today. So good observation, Commissioner McDougall, and we are here today because of that involvement. Anything further from you? If not, go back to Commissioner Critchley.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question to Carol's question, which was, it's great to hear all the stakeholder engagement, particularly with community groups. I was wondering if, in terms of kind of public consultation, was there any plan for a public survey or other kinds of opportunities for members of the public, beyond sort of specific organizations to provide input?
I will ask Bill to jump in on this a little bit, but I can maybe add to his comments afterwards.
Sure. Thank you for the question. There has been discussions on when the report, within the scope of the PwC contract, that part of the consultation has been completed. Once the report is been turned over to HRM and then presented back to council as per their motion, then there's an opportunity then to basically pose the question as to what other consultation would they like to be done based. So one of the discussion points we've had to this point was, we obviously I suggest that we would refer it to the board for the board's review, but that's obviously subject to council's direction. And also look to either circulate the report back to some of the groups that were used as to provide input to see if they can see their comments reflected in the position. And if council does wish, then a period of either broader public consultation on the report. So those are still things to be decided and either through the CAO's office or as by the direction of council.
Thank you for that, Bill. I don't think I have too much to add to that.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else. I only have one question. Another one was already answered. And I see Connor O'Day's here. Maybe Bill, you can also fill in here. I'm just wondering, because we also have the public safety strategy, which is going through their update as well. So I'm just curious on from HRMs and Josh, you might not have an interest, so from Bill or Connor, just how this study could potentially reflect what might come out of the public safety strategy.
Yeah, I can jump in there, Councillor. Yeah, so hi, everybody. Connor O'Day, Senior Policy Advisor with Government Relations at External Affairs, and I am here partially representing the Public Safety Strategy Renewal. So the work that we're doing there that has been contracted out to a second consultancy firm on the Public Safety Strategy Renewal is being dovetailed quite carefully with the work that Josh and company are doing through PwC. So we're looking to make sure that the model validations that we're doing, the consultation that we're doing is matching up. So we're seeing similar vision when we are developing things across the board to make sure that we are creating appropriate catch basins for the work that we're seeing come out of one project. And that may fall into the other. I'm happy to go into more detail there, but just basically, they are being thought of as being closely related while having some level of obviously their own sort of model approaches because of the distinctness of both projects.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Just really wanted a quick understanding of how that relates. So nothing further from me unless other folks have questions on that. No. All right. So thank you again, folks from PwC and Bill and team for coming today. There will be a follow-up item which will be related to Commissioner Critchley's question. So whenever you have that prepared, I'll make sure the board gets that. And I don't believe, let me just open up my agenda here. I don't believe there's any motions or anything we need to, no, we do not. So thank you again, and we'll move on to our next item. So I'm going to propose we take a quick break before we get into our next few items. So let's come back at 2:05. So we'll 10 minutes. People to stretch, get some water, whatever they may need. Thank you. All right, who's back? Looks like we got everybody. Just doing a double check. Yep.
Yes, Chair Smith, we have everybody.
All right. So moving on. So we just received a presentation on the overview of fleet transformation study. Now go to 10.2.2, enforcement of protection of property act at homeless encampment sites on municipal parks. So this was an item that was asked for at a previous meeting, and there's no motion attached to this at the moment, so I'll pass it to Chief Kinsella to bring any remarks or answer any questions that folks may have.
So thanks, Chair, and through you to the board. We've provided the report. We are currently, as we've said in the report, only responding to encampments for reports of criminality or if we're called by the city. As I've mentioned in past meetings, our response has evolved to the encampment situation, and currently, just by the very aspect of a tent popping up, it is a 311 response. Our colleagues at HRM are dealing with it unless they feel the need for a police response. So we are not removing anyone strictly for being homeless. And if we get to a point where we're even contemplating taking some action at an encampment, then a supervisor will attend. The watch commander will become involved, and then to the extent that's required, the duty officer. The Protection of Property Act doesn't have anything specific to encampments or homelessness. So we are, working very closely with our colleagues at HRM and have been for some time now. Happy to take any questions, specific questions.
Thank you, Chief. What I'll do is I'll get the information from Inspector Landry, and then if folks have questions, you can ask to either force. So Inspector Landry, any comments?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Commission. So you have the report that was provided from the RCMP dated August 3rd, 2022. Very similar to what was just described by Chief Kinsella. We do have our community action response team that is engaged with HRM, navigators, and other partners and stakeholders with regards to a small encampment in Lower Sackville. So that team is engaged, and we are currently working with our partners to identify proper housing solutions for those individuals. Obviously, if we are called to a park regarding an encampment issue, we have the same protocols and processes in place where the responding officer will engage their supervisor, watch commander, and then the on-call duty officer for the RCMP. All employees have been directed not to remove encampments or take any action regarding encampments until it's been discussed with the appropriate level of supervision. Also happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from members with the reports that were presented? Commissioner Critchley?
I guess my question relates to, I can direct it to both the chief and the chief superintendent. And I appreciate that this isn't something that's reflected in policy, that there's sort of operational guidance that's being provided that's been fairly consistent. But I'm just wondering, like, is this an area where policy is needed, or where just to ensure that operational guidance is kind of making its way throughout the whole force, and that everyone's aware of kind of what's going on. And to the best of your knowledge, this is an area where other police forces, with similar operational guidance, have taken that guidance and then substantiated it in a policy.
Who'd like to take that first?
So I'll go first, Chair, if that's okay, and through you to the commission. So interesting question, Commissioner Critchley. We haven't had the need to date, but we have an evolving, social situation that we're very in tune to and that we take very seriously. There may be some exploration that could be done around that to see whether there would be a benefit to having specific to homelessness. It is something that we do have, and we're happy to look at that. And beyond that, there might be other areas that we could look at where, instead of leaving it broad, covered by, whether the bylaw or the Protection of Property Act, we could look at something more specific around the homelessness situation. And, as I mentioned, we've evolved. I would like to say we've learned as we've gone along. We've gotten a lot more people involved now across the spectrum, including the engagement of the board. And you're obviously taking this very seriously as well. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for us to look at that, have some further dialogue. And I know you're keen to do that, Commissioner. So perhaps we could get together and see where we can fit that in and broaden the conversation to Acting Chief Superintendent Landry and see where we can go to have something joint and consistent with the views of the commission, the law enforcement partners, and we can also involve the municipality. I think that would be very important. As you know, we've been working very closely with Parks and Rec staff. We recently, with their assistance and in conjunction, we were able to secure Mar Park, and we've made a lot of inroads. But I truly believe that there's always more we can do, and certainly as it relates to the protection of our most vulnerable, I think any steps that we take collectively are positive steps. So I look forward to further discussion on that.
Inspector, I see you took your mic off mute. Did you have any comments?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the commission. I echo the chief's comments. I think it's important that we approach this from a unified approach with both agencies to ensure that the way we're managing this is complementary of each other and in support of each other. I'm fully committed to having those conversations with the chief to develop a maiden HRM policy or process for dealing with encampments. We don't specifically have a policy specific to the enforcement of encampments. We do have a more general policy specific to the enforcement of the Protection of Property Act, but that could be definitely fine-tuned to address the issues with encampments. As I said, we are approaching it from a proactive approach with our community action response team, and looking forward to engaging with other agencies and stakeholders in the HRP to support a local policy or process for dealing with these that's codified. Thank you.
Thank you both. Commissioner Critchley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. And I appreciate the comments from both the chief and the chief superintendent. I think with respect to sort of the values of policy, I'm in full agreement with the chief. I think there's, there's been a lot of evolution and learning and movement over the last year. And unfortunately, this is an issue that is, there are a number of people who are sitting outside or who are insecurely housed, is unfortunately increasing year over year. I mean, I remember when I first moved to Halifax, I think there was just under 200 people, right, on that category, and now there's in excess of 600, right? So it's a major increase, and I think policies can be important for a couple reasons, right? They ensure consistency, as the chief noted. They allow for, succession planning. The chief, I think, has been a major leader in ensuring that this information is disseminated, right? But, worry to move on to better and brighter things, or, want to sit on a beach somewhere, then, a policy ensures that continues to be the case. And I think to the chief's point as well, that beyond just kind of concerns with respect to the Protection of Property Act and its enforcement, there could be kind of other aspects of the policy that, could be included in a larger approach to homeless encampments, right? So I'm thinking of the presentation that we received from a member of the public a while back, and some of the concerns that were raised there, just with respect to kind of dignity and a human rights-based approach. Concerns that have been conveyed to me as well by some of my colleagues, especially in regard to things like people receiving summary offense tickets. I noted in the RCMP policy, it contemplates that summary offense tickets for this offenses under the Protection of Property Act are discretionary. So, obviously there's no motion, Chair Smith, around this today, but perhaps, I'll provide notice of motion at a later time in the meeting, but it could be something where our new policy advisor coming on to support the board, that could be a valuable task for them to look at. What are other municipalities and municipal police forces doing around Canada? Have they developed policies on this issue, and are there learnings that we can take?
Great. Yeah, if you provide notice, I think that'd be a welcome motion for sure. Commissioner McDougall and Commissioner Blackman.
Thank you. I was about to take down my hand because Harry already sort of suggested that the new person, the policy advisor, look at what's happening across the country and advise us. And I think it's really important as we go forward that we've learned that commissions do and boards do have a function to provide policy and can suggest. And I think both Chief Kinsella and Inspector Landry have indicated they'd be willing to sit down and work through policy. So I think that's a really good start for a policy that this board could create going forward. I really liked the idea of the combination of community organizations working together with HRM, and to me that's really an important step too, rather than sort of being an advocate or being an advocate as opposed to an adversary in trying to resolve that whole situation, which is challenging. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Lisa, you're good?
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. Yeah, just wanted to follow up quickly on what Commissioner Critchley was saying. I think a notice of motion at this meeting might be a bit premature. I do like the idea of having our new coordinator sort of do a jurisdictional scan, but further to that, the work is sort of already started, because the working group that's looking at the Dr. L. Jones report, we're actually just finishing up that now, and there is an entire section on housing and homelessness, and I think that drafting a motion or suggesting a motion is perhaps something that the subcommittee, when they start their work, that they can perhaps get that information from our new coordinator and do a little bit of digging to craft a motion that will, as Inspector Landry put it, will be a homegrown solution to, or a motion that will bring forward some policies that will suit us best here in Halifax. So just wanted to let you know that by just a quick update on what the working group is doing, and how that will most likely parallel what Commissioner Critchley is trying to do with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that added context. So there's no motion on the floor at the moment, but as mentioned, a motion would definitely be welcome from the comments I heard today at a later time. So with that, I'll move on to the next item, which is from members of the Board of Police Commissioners. 10.3.1 Commissioner Smith Lee, our response to recommendations of the Nova Scotia Police Review Board. So I will ask Commissioner McDougall to assume the virtual chair, and I'll put the motion on the floor.
Thank you. Commissioner Chair, Councillor Smith, if you would like to put this motion on the floor.
All right, thank you. The motion is that the chair of the Board of Police Commissioners direct the chief officer of the Halifax Regional Police to prepare a staff report responding to recommendations of the Nova Scotia Police Review Board and outline one, if HRP will be implementing the suggestions put forward by the review board. Two, what training and education is in place for officers for the three topics outlined in the Nova Scotia Police Review Board decision. Three, highlighting improvement opportunities in education or training related to the outlined topics. And four, a plan to address the necessary improvements.
Second. Seconder. Thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have any comments, questions? I think we had in our package, I know we had the report. So you've had an opportunity to read through or review the recommendations. Do we have any comments, questions from anyone?
I'll just jump in really quick if you don't mind. Just for folks who might not have had opportunity to read the package, as mentioned, it is there, the motion notice. So two aspects of this. So it was the Nova Scotia Police Review Board released its decision on May 16th, and this was an appeal brought by Mr. Rogers and members of Mr. Corey Rogers, and I'm sure folks are familiar with that case. So with their recommendation, it outlined three areas, and I won't read them, but I'll just mention the first. Well, I'll just read them because again, folks might not have that opportunity. So the three was HRP should implement forward officers education in one, recognizing the signs of extreme intoxication. Two, addiction-informed approaches to interact with intoxicated people and any other form of crisis interventions training that will assist in preparing the officers to intervene with members of the public involved in living with addictions in the course of their police duties. And three, de-escalation and conflict management when dealing with civilians, but particularly those who are under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So the review board felt that even though HRP was not charged with anything, they felt that these trainings would be necessary to help with the education and training and the delivery of service for those who are intoxicated or otherwise. So really, this motion is and the chief, you may have comments today or question clarifications, but really this motion is to look at the recommendations that the review board brought forward and get an understanding if HRP will be implementing any of those, and if not, why. But also really just to get information on how HRP has taken these recommendations and will be moving forward in the future, so we don't see any incident like this happen again. So that's really it for me, and happy to answer any questions commissioners may have.
So do we have any questions from? Not seeing any. I'm just wondering, Chief Kinsella, do you have any comments you'd like to make, or?
Thank you, Vice Chair, and through you to the commission. Yes. So, you know, with all of these reports and recommendations, we obviously take them very seriously. We have done some preliminary work looking into not only the report itself, but the outcomes and suggested outcomes, what happened to the officers, all those kind of things. You may know that we've made a number of changes in our PCF to ensure that we don't have something like this occur again. Number of mitigation strategies, most importantly, in the board, you will have been part of this, the increase in supervision within our PCF. There was a time when we did not have supervisors down there. And when I say down there in the PCF 24/7, we've since rectified that. We've upped our training in a number of areas as well, and we'll continue to be focused on this. You know, these kind of outcomes and recommendations are very important, and we're happy to go and do a staff report. Really appreciate the support of the board in this area. These are complex matters. They're not generally directly related to police training. And when I say that, we do training in de-escalation, and de-escalation training is done across the country. I don't think we have spent or put our mind a lot to de-escalation for specifically intoxicated or individuals living with addiction. And that's an important thing that we need to look at and make sure that we're covering these particular aspects off. Further to that, you know, being cognizant and in tune with recognizing, you know, the signs and symptoms of acute intoxication, very important. And that's what, you know, one of the reasons that we put the supervisor in the prisoner care facility, to ensure that we had an extra set of eyes. So we've got the officers who are bringing potentially bringing individuals into the PCF. We have our booking officers who are doing assessments. And then we have an additional layer in the supervision and the NCO or sergeant being present during that check-in period, having conversations, calling EHS when is required to provide treatment and further and additional assessments. But anything that we can do to better train our members, to better have them respond, to potentially help us save or prevent a tragic situation like this occurring, we're certainly all for it, and we're pleased to be able to put that report together and bring it forward. And beyond that, we'll really appreciate the support of the board on where do we go to ensure that our officers are as trained, as educated, and as prepared as they possibly can be to deal with these types of situations.
Thank you. Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. And a little bit more context, or just a heads up as this report is being produced, that I think we're, and perhaps Chair Smith can correct me on this, but I think we're still awaiting a report at council with regards to setting up of sobering centers. And so I think that plays in quite well with what this motion is going to accomplish, trying to accomplish. So I just ask that you reach out and find out the status of that, because that is certainly something that was embraced by council, and something that there was a definite interest in seeing become reality, and hopefully eliminate the number of folks that end up at the prisoner facility, the basement as they call it. And just keep that in mind, whoever is going forth with the report, that you might want to touch base with the folks doing the sobering center report. Thank you.
And Chair, if I could just comment.
Yes.
So thank you for that, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. Really appreciate that reminder. There is some wonderful work being done out of the Public Safety Office, and we are connected with Amy and her team. So we'll certainly incorporate that. And the other thing I would suggest is they'll need to be able to work with us on this. I'm sure they'll have some ideas and some opportunities for training, and we can put something together. And the other piece I would say is I don't think this will be a quick turnaround. I'll have to put my mind a little bit to the detail that will be required to not only find that training, but see how do we provide it to 540 plus sworn members and some of our civilian members. So point well taken, Commissioner, and we'll certainly connect with the Public Safety Office on that and move forward together.
So just before we go to a vote, I would like to add too that as you pull together various voices to advise, respond to this motion, it might be worth it too to consider First Voice as part of training, because that's always a good resource for anyone who's trying to get a better understanding of the condition that you're exploring and creating a policy about and doing education for. And I know there are a number of organizations in the city that are dealing with people who are recovering from addiction, and it would be worth it to have some of them involved in this too. I'm not quite sure how extensive the public safety strategy reaches out, but it is worth it to consider that too. With that, should I call for the vote?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? I don't hear any, and I'll turn this back to the chair. Thank you.
You might as well stay in it because I believe the next one is mine as well.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. The next motion then, could you read the motion?
Yep. Give me 1 second here. I put forward, and we already gave waived notice, correct? So I can just read the motion?
That is correct, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. I move that the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners direct the Chief of Police to present to the board proposed written policies respecting extra-duty employment and off-duty employment by members of the Halifax Regional Police for review and adoption by the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners as board policy.
Do we have a seconder?
Second?
Thank you, Lisa. So Lindell, Commissioner Smith, Chair Smith, would you like to
Yeah, so
speak to the motion?
Yeah, so this one might need some some tuning by commissioners for a few reasons. So I'll speak to the background of why I think this is appropriate, and then talk about why I think we might need to look at doing some rewording for the motion itself. So the reason that brought this forward is twofold. One is we know in the past month that the extra duty program was a program that made a lot of media attention, and we've heard from concerns from residents as counselor and as a police commissioner of folks who feel that they shouldn't see police in private businesses, et cetera, understanding that the extra duty program is a long-standing program that's been around for I'm not sure how long, but a very, very long time. I think because it was public interest, it was important for us as the board to at least have a discussion around the issue. The other piece of it that makes sense is when you look at our handbook, the board handbook, policy manual, there is direct reference to, well, one, the Police Act says that we need to have a policy for extra duty, but there's another, for our policy manual, it does say that the board will continue to approve any extra duty and off-duty employment and policies as we move forward. And Carrie or Commissioner McDougall, you were part of the update initially, so you might be able to provide some background on how we got to the policy we have now. But I think understanding that there's a lot of public interest I think it'd be a good time to just do a review of what the current policy is. And then my understanding, the policy that we do have, and this is where Marty, you might have to jump in, Mr. Ward, the policy we do have is just a mirror of HRP's current policy, which that isn't a front-facing policy that the public can access, which is a problem if we are saying it's our policy, but the public can't access it. So there's a couple places where I think we just need to fill in some gaps, but yeah, so there's that. In terms of the motion itself, this might not actually be something that the chief presents to the board. This might be something that our policy person, when they are hired, actually prepares for us. So that's where I'm looking at the commission to see, and maybe even in Mr. Ward, if it should be more appropriate that it get directed to the CAO to have the policy person prepare this report for an update of this policy. So really just looking for comments and questions. It can stay as it is, but I think there's some room for us to look at the motion as it stands now.
So we have a number of people who are interested in speaking. I'm not sure if we should go with Marty first, just in terms of legal, it's fine. So Commissioner Blackburn.
No, just quickly, I'd certainly like to see where the RCMP falls into this as well. I don't ever remember seeing uniformed RCMP outside the NSLC or doing patrols, you know, at the local hockey arena. So I don't know what their policies are on this, but certainly I'd be, and I don't know, I don't think we have to have an amendment, or maybe we do need an amendment on this, but I think I'd certainly like to see where the RCMP falls on this policy as well, please. Thank you.
Just before I call on Marty and Harry, I'd just like to provide some context because Lindell did mention that. So back in 2019, when we were developing policies, it was obvious in the Police Act that we were to have a policy on extra duty, off duty policing. And at the time, there was a great deal of policy shifting development going on within HRP. And it made sense for us at the time to endorse their policy. And that motion came to the board and it was passed in 2020, I believe it was March, but I could be corrected on that. Mainly because it was fairly extensive. And we were so unused to developing policy for police, and for ourselves at that stage. I think right now, and when this all became even more discussed, even more in public, I did send an email to Lindell and say, you know, I think it's really important for us to look at this again and decide whether it works for us still or how we want to revise it or endorse it or whatever. So just providing that context for how it ended up being there. And I will mention that Harry mentioned to me one time that it's referred to in our policy manual, but it's not actually there, or there's no link, which is something that should have happened way back. But hopefully we can now correct that. So I'll go to Marty next. I apologize for the informality.
Thank you.
Unaccustomed as I am to chairing the meeting.
Well, I think there's to follow up what the chair said. I think there's a couple of ways to go at this. I mean, as you said, the board has to have a policy it's required by the legislation to have a policy for each one of these things, right? And as I understand it, the police have policies. I don't know if they have a policy on off-duty employment, but they do have extra duty policy. One of the problems was the board policy just simply makes reference to it. So I don't think the public can access that on the website. But one of two options here, really. One is to go with what we have here and ask the board to ask the chief to produce a proposal at this point. A second option may be just to ask the chief at this point to bring back a report on it, on the existing policies that they have now on these things, and that would leave it open in the board to review those policies or that the police have now and decide where it wants to go with its own policies. The third thing might be to ask, either myself or someone else in CAO's office to come up with a policy thing at this point. I'm thinking those are different options that could be used. It's clearly the situation has to be addressed and reviewed. It's just a question of how we go about this, in my opinion, anyway.
Thank you for that. I see we've got hands up from both Harry and Chief Kinsella. So are you going to say something that you've already answered Harry's question, Chief, or whatever? Are you providing context or?
No, I'm content to go after Commissioner Critchley. And I'm just going to give a little bit of context based on Mr. Ward's comments, but I think it would be most appropriate if Commissioner Critchley went first.
Thank you. Commissioner
Okay,
Critchley.
that's good, because I was going to say the opposite. I think that, it's clear that as Carol, you mentioned, the current policy that's on the board website is insufficient, right? It doesn't meet the requirements of the legislation even, right? The legislation requires that we define certain words, that we prohibit certain things, and our policy says that we endorse in full another policy that is not accessible to the public. And I think I would be content for today, and I don't want to overstep Chair Smith, but I think it would be valuable, as Mr. Ward suggested in a sort of option 2, to sort of know what the existing policies are with respect to extra duty and off-duty employment. So I guess the only kind of language that in the motion it says for the board to review and adopt. And so I wondered if it might just be changed to for review, right? Because it's important that the board know what the policy is. Secondarily, it's important that the public know what the policy is. And that's before we even kind of get into the merits of the policy. But so if that could be accomplished sort of first, and then we're not binding ourselves to adopting a policy that we haven't read.
Thank you. Chief Kinsella.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Commission. So just a little bit of background, and I won't go on too long, but we are working on the policy refresh. We're working on, and I'm telling you things you already know. We're working on identifying policies that we can bring forward to make them public facing. So we've committed to that, and we're doing that work, and that report will be coming forward. Part of that work is to bring forward refresh policies. So we're working hard on that, and I know Commissioner Critchley and Chair Smith were at the station with us one day going through and reviewing some of the work that we are doing and that still has to be done. So having said all of that, we want to remain flexible, and since the discussion came up around this, we have looked at the policy. It is a little dated, but certainly was recognized as being very comprehensive, and it last came to the board on January 18th, 2021, I believe, when it was adopted. And this is certainly one of the policies that we can provide. We can make public facing. We can probably refresh it fairly quickly, particularly with the interest I'm hearing from the board. The question will be is for consideration of the board, is this one of transparency, i.e. having the policy visible to the public, or is it looking at the policy and saying, in certain circumstances, we as a board are questioning the need to have police in certain situations. So there are two policies. To Mr. Ward's point earlier, or his comment, there is the extra duty policy, which is very comprehensive. There is the off-duty policy. One of my considerations in that we were going to bring forward when we bring the refresh forward, and we can perhaps expedite it depending on the wishes of the board. In the off-duty policy, there is a specific set of occupations that have been identified in the policy. Security guard is one. Process server is another. Those are the types of things that at the time when either they were developed by the police chief and team of the time, or with the board of the time, somebody likely said, here's some specific things that we don't think officers should participate in. And some of them are self-evident. Those exact same identifiers are not currently in the extra duty policy, but it might be something that the board wants to look at to say, maybe we have to consider whether we will have officers engaging in the extra duty. And I know there's been a lot of talk about between me and you as the board, about the impact of all this extra work that officers are doing. So we need and should have some consideration of that. I just think this would be a good opportunity for us. They are, after all, as been mentioned, identified in the Police Act as being policies of the board, and the board should have those policies. So we're happy to engage as you see fit. If you want to report up front, if you just want the policies, but I would ask you to seriously consider if we're going to do a rewrite of the policy, we should have a look at it and see if we want to make specific categories. Is it all about transparency? We can refresh and put it up, or is it about something more in regards to, is there a feeling amongst the board based on what they've heard and what they've experienced that perhaps we should be looking at specific types of extra duty that should be part of what they do? So I'll leave it at that, and unless there's any other questions, I hope that was a little bit helpful.
So just to respond to some of your questions, Chief Kinsella, it's my understanding that none of the board members have even seen this policy. Have they? Has anyone actually seen it? No. So I think the really the first step is for board members to get it and see what exists and what was passed, as you said, in 2021, January 2021. So and I think it was attached to the document at the time, but since has fallen away. So maybe the first step is to actually look at a document and then make some decision about what to do next. Does that make sense to you, Chair Smith?
So the beauty of you taking on the chair is it allows me to think and type at the same time. So I have kind of rewritten the motion a little bit from what I've heard from members. And I can I'll put it in the chat for folks to just kind of look at, but I'll read some of the changes. So what I'm hearing that it should include the RCMP, even if they don't have a policy, just making sure that that answered is if they have a policy or not. I think that's appropriate. So I just added the RCMP to the motion, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, so we can work in collaboration. I also added the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, because this might be a job for our policy, whatever the person is, to review, to make sure that we are making our adhering to our obligations within the Police Act to the policy. So Commissioner Creasley mentioned that it says specifically what should be included in that. So I think what can happen in the meantime is, even if while we're receiving it, the person who's looking at the policy can start to say, okay, here's the policy. This is what the police doc says. Let me start to put the puzzle pieces together. And that work can happen before we even, or even at the same time, we see the policy itself. Because no matter what, I think that work is going to have to be done, because if we're just referencing HRP's policy, then I'm sure that we probably have some pieces that the board needs to shore up. So that's my thought there. And number two is kind of an added item, but I think it relates to making, Commissioner Christie said, is making sure that we're adhering to what the legislation has told us to do. And the third is make current policy available to the public as referenced in the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners Policy Manual. If we're going to reference it as our policy manual that's available to the public, we should make sure the policy is available. And I know the chief mentioned that work is happening. So, we make a decision today and that can be removed, but are we going to make it public or not? Because we have to, if we're going to reference it, it either should be there, or we should say that in our policy manual and like asterisks being reviewed will be updated later. Something, because we shouldn't just leave it the way it is today.
So Marty, you have something to add? And then Commissioner Critchley.
Only that I to make sure, Chair Smith, that I understand here, the board would be informed by both police agencies of their policies that they have for review. And from that, the board would then revise its own policies or review its own policies and make a decision. The only caveat on that, and I think you've already thought about it here, is that the board would have no jurisdiction to make a policy that spoke to extra duty employment or off-duty employment by the RCMP. Okay, as long as we understood that would be a matter for Treasury Board and Federal Treasury Board to do that. It was the employer of the RCMP. All right, other than that, those were my only comments.
So Harry, are you?
Sure, yeah, I guess I just want to say that, I'd echo what you said, Carol, and, I really think it's a two-step process, as you suggested. First we have to, as the board, we have to know what the policy is. And I think, and I look to the chief, if I understood the chief correctly, he seemed to be saying that this is a policy that in its current form could be released to the public. And so I think it's important that we know what the policy is, and that where it's referenced in our policy, that the public know what the current policy is. And then I think we can save for a later date a review of the merits of the existing policy. There, as the chief suggested, that there may be, that's a kind of fuller discussion about, well, what should the contents of the policy be? Does it need to be changed? But just in terms of what is the policy currently, ensuring the board knows that and ensuring the public knows that, where we reference it in our own board policy, I think that would be a great first step.
So, Chair Smith, would you agree to amending your motion to, I don't know if you actually need to that specifically, but maybe.
Madam Vice Chair, could I?
Sure.
Could I just make a comment, please? Thank you.
Yes.
And through you to the commission might be a little bit helpful. So we're bringing our report in October, at least that's the plan on the policy refresh. We'll have to firm that up when we meet on the agenda review, but that is currently the plan. So you have that. We could, in this instance with this policy, bring that to the board. With minimal changes or edits. I have to have a quick look. I've looked at it recently, but I would have to look at it again. And I think that could be one of the ones that very quickly get put on the public facing part of the internet, and then the board would have it. The only thing that we would likely do is put it on our new template, which we've explained a little bit about that to you in the past. And then to Commissioner Critchley's point, at least I think what he was saying, is a broader and deeper dive into the policy itself could be done. There isn't anything that I'm aware of, I have to have a quick look, that can be made public by October kind of thing, which is about as quickly as we get them to you anyway. So that might be helpful. The other piece of it is that meets the transparency part, and then the other piece of it, the who and which ones can purchase the service and that kind of thing. We can collectively have a deeper dive into it, and certainly the board can take their time and digest what's in there, and then make a determination on any type of review that might be desired. And at the end of the day, it is two of the policies, and we would provide them both. It's two of the policies that are specifically mentioned under the Police Act as belonging to the board. So thank you for that, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. So, Chair Smith, your motion. Marty, you have a comment?
Just a small point. The board has jurisdiction to both, to direct the chief and the RCMP to produce that information for them. I don't think the chief administrative officer should be in there. I don't think there's, not really directing the chief administrative officer wouldn't hold these policies and wouldn't be subject to the board's jurisdiction. So I think that would be probably, if that's okay with Chair Smith, probably better in order to remove the chief administrative officer from that.
And I'll just say before you go, sorry.
So I think we have comment from Inspector Landry. I'm just seeing Halifax District RCMP, and yes, it is you. Did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. To Commissioner Blackburn's point, I'm happy to provide a very brief overview of our current policies if it suits the board, and also happy to provide a more detailed report to the board in a written format. Just wanted to offer that to you and the board if that suited your needs.
Thank you. So where are we now? Chair Smith.
Sorry, I jumped in there earlier. What I was going to say, and I don't mind taking up the CAO. I only reference the CAO because if we do review, we might want the policy person who's under the CAO to support that work. So that's the only reason the CAO is there. Happy to take it out if it makes things a little convoluted. But I guess really quickly, Marty, should I take that out and save that for later? Yeah, okay. So happy to take the CAO out. That's fine. And yeah, if there's any other suggestions before we vote, I think we're all in line of what we want to do. I don't hear anything that I am concerned about. So if somebody wants to make another change, just let me know, and happy to make it a friendly. But I guess the only change from what we have currently is to remove the CAO reference.
So do I have a seconder for this revised motion? What do we do with the other one?
I think, I think the chair can either withdraw the other one and replace it with this one in its amended form, or people could treat it as a friendly amendment. I think either way, probably simpler if you just withdrew it and say, this is the motion now. If people will let them withdraw it, I'm sure they will.
Could this just be a friendly?
Could just be a friendly.
Yeah.
All right.
As seconder, I'm good with that.
Okay, and Andrea, can you, Andrea, take out the reference to the Chief Administrative Office?
Yes, I have. I will just post what I have in the chat.
Okay.
And I'll read it. I'll read it for the record.
Great.
There we go.
The motion now reads that the Board of Police Commissioners direct the Chief of the Halifax Regional Police and Halifax District Royal Canadian Mounted Police to present to the board written policies respecting extra duty employment and off-duty employment by members of the Halifax Regional Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police for review. 2, review section 56(1) of the Police Act that requires that the board establish a written policy for extra duty employment and off-duty employment by police officers and ensure the board is adhering to, I should say, our legislative duties. It's out. This is a small mistake there from me. And 3, make current policy available to the public as referenced in the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners Policy Manual.
So, sorry, do we have another comment from Marty?
I think the intent was to make both into under 3 available to make current, well, do you read policy as plural or, policy or policies? Either way, I think
I will make it plural.
Okay, I think the intent is to put both of them to the public.
Correct.
Thank you. And Commissioner Blackburn, that's a friendly amendment.
Absolutely, yes.
You
Thank
agree?
you.
So can I call for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? So I'll turn this back to you.
Thank you. And now it's the vice chair show. So moving on to 11.2, Commissioner McDougall, Canadian Association of Police Governors, 33rd Annual Conference virtual registration. And this is you, Commissioner McDougall.
So thank you. This is kind of a housekeeping to allow those of us who are interested in participating virtually in the conference, which is taking place in Saskatoon tomorrow. I will mention that tomorrow is a full day of First Nations police governance, and it's going to be started with an elder reflecting on what happened throughout the province on Sunday. And so that it will be, I think what was sent to me was a comment that there will be a lot of heavy hearts at that meeting tomorrow. So the motion reads, and I don't need to read the waiver, do I? Just go straight to the motion.
That is correct, Chair McDougall.
Okay. That the Board of Police Commissioners approve the registration of the Board of Police Commissioners as a virtual participant at the Canadian Association of Police Governance 33rd Annual Conference and First Nations Police Governance Conference to be held in person and virtually in Saskatoon from September 7 to 11. The board's virtual registration will be up to 5 attendees, including Commissioner Yemi Akindoju. I will mention that Yemi has just been appointed to the national board, so it's a great opportunity for him to sit in with the different sessions that are going on. And if anyone else, just as an added comment, if anyone else is interested to add their name for up to 5 members, please let Andrea know as soon as possible before the end of this meeting so that she can add them to the list, assuming that we approve this motion.
Can I second the motion?
Thank you. So I don't see any other comments. Chair, do you want to call for the question?
Question.
Yes, and I didn't, I was speaking thinking that I was off mute. What a day. So thank you, Commissioner McDougall. Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, great.
Don't forget to send your names to Jennifer, or sorry, to Jennifer, that's national, to Andrea before the end of the meeting so she can complete her registration. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that reminder. Actually, is there any, while we're here, does anybody just want to put their hand up who wants to be registered? Carol, myself, anyone else want to, Harry, and yeah, so Andrew, if you just want to put forward our names, me, Carol, Harry.
Chair.
And yeah,
Chair Smith, I think if I can squeeze in part of it, I would be interested in that too.
all right, yep.
I think
If
it
you
would
can
be useful.
Yep, Marty as well, if you want to add Marty's name. And I know usually someone from the public safety office joins. Amy usually joins if she can. So if you want to add Amy and maybe Connor O'Day, I think that that's all of our.
We have 5.
I think with 5, it would be you, Chair, Carol, Commissioners Critchley, Akonjuju, and then our solicitor, and that would give us 5.
And who? Sorry, yeah, you're right. I don't know why I thought it was 10. Who? So myself, Carol, Yemi, Harry. Who am I missing?
Martin Ward, our solicitor.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yep, that's fine. If I have to buddy up with somebody so we can be in a meeting together, we'll do that. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, so moving on to items for future consideration, we have none in camera. We do have some minutes. Would somebody like to put forward motion to approve July 18th to July 25th minutes? Moved by Commissioner McDougall, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, say nay. All right, in-camera minutes have been adopted. We do have in-camera information items. Does anybody need to go in camera to discuss those items? Not seeing anyone jumping. All right, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion?
Chair Smith, I know I said earlier I'd bring a notice, but I might wait and get some clarification from Commissioner Blackburn and just make sure that before I bring anything forward, you know, it's aligning with the work they're doing.
Yeah, whatever works for you. If you could also, if you want, put the motion at least on the floors, and if you just so it's on the record, if you have something prepared, and then that way we get to our next meeting, we don't have to do the whole everything, but I'll leave it to you.
I'll just wait for now. That's all right.
All right. Yep, not a problem. Okay, anyone else? No. I should have actually looked and see if I had anything. Give me 3 seconds here. Nope. All right. Date of our next meeting is October 5th, 2022. And I will call for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.